You casual American swine.
Yeah.
That's the way to start a podcast, isn't it?
Yep.
Why don't you want to eat organs and eyeballs? Actually, I don't even think... Do clams and oysters have an eyeball anyway? I don't know if they do.
I don't know. It just seems weird.
Doesn't look like they have an eyeball.
I grew up a really, really, really picky eater, and I wouldn't eat no vegetables or no nothing that was weird. So some of that has carried on, and I'm okay with a little bit of it, where I'm like, that's not that important for me to make myself like now. Whatever.
You basically grew up on McDonald's and Pop-Tarts and Totino's.
Whoa, bologna sandwiches with mayonnaise.
And bologna sandwiches with mayonnaise.
Kool-Aid, where I put in 4 cups of sugar and then only kind of regret it.
And quad strength concentrated Kool-Aid.
That was thick. That was a thick Kool-Aid.
Until you went vegan.
It's not supposed to be a soup. Yeah.
Going vegan was the palate expander for you,
when I did that month-long vegan challenge, I was like, I'm tired of... Because we watched that... What was it? Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. It's talking about juicing. And then, like... You did some juicing after that, but my inspiration was just I don't eat vegetables, so I'm gonna eat vegan for a month, because if I can only eat plants, then I can stop eating microwaved frozen chicken nuggets with like chili powder and mayonnaise in a tortilla. This is not.
Hey, that's legit.
Like, that's not that awesome of a food.
If it takes an exclusionary diet to make you stop eating microwaved mayonnaise tortillas.
Yeah, not that great of a food. I'm not that proud of those lunches, and I kind of felt gross after them. I felt amazing when I went vegan for that month. Eating vegetables and stuff, I felt more energetic. I was like, "What is this? Are these vitamins? I've never eaten vitamins. I've probably been malnourished my whole life because I didn't eat these.
I've been running a constant vitamin deficiency since I was about 4 years old.
Yeah,
this is about the norm for me. I feel like Superman right now.
Like, whoa, it was amazing."
Anyway, welcome to the College Info Geek podcast. We're going to talk about cooking today, as you probably could have told when you clicked on the episode's title.
Yes, the title, yes.
Unless you're like one of those listeners that just does the whole Russian roulette on the podcast app and
That's
then just
an interesting way to do that.
Yeah, what
when there are so many episodes and you don't know what to pick, I don't care. There should just be a random button.
Remember when websites back in the day used to have like a random button? And Wikipedia still has one.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I remember our friend Aaron, part of his morning routine was to read this, like click the random button on Wikipedia and read a random article, which gave him an annoyingly large variety of useless knowledge that he liked to bring up all the time.
That's what it's for.
That is what it's for, yeah. You don't need one of those toilet books for useless knowledge. You just wake up and you do the random button on Wikipedia.
What's the point of knowing things if you can't, like, tell it to everyone, you know?
Yeah, exactly. There's no point.
That's what it's for.
It's just about telling people the things you randomly know from Wikipedia.
Yep.
Yeah. We mentioned the juicing story, though, so I feel like I owe the audience an explanation, because I was not juicing on steroids.
Oh, you were on steroids, but also you were filthy. You bounced out of that real fast. Gosh, I did. Now defend yourself.
All right. So there's this documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. And what was this, like junior year of college?
Something like that. That sounds about right.
I think we were doing the thing where we scroll through Netflix and we just can't decide on what to watch. And for some reason, we decided to watch a nutrition documentary called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. Now, if I remember correctly, none of us had any like weight loss or nutritional plans personally before watching it.
Yeah.
But we did have one friend who, number one, would never eat vegetables ever. And number two, was pretty overweight at the time. So we watched this video, and it's about this guy. I think he's from Australia. He was overweight, and his drastic plan of action was to eat no solid foods, I think for 60 days. All the dude did was he bought a juicer, and he juiced up fresh fruits and vegetables and drank the juice. So not even the pulp and the fiber. It wasn't smoothies. It was literally just the juices of this stuff for 60 days. And apparently there's enough calories in juice. I don't know.
Well, he was putting a lot of vegetables and stuff in there. Like when you only get in the juice, you got to put in a lot of plants to get a decent amount of juice.
It's true. Now, there are some problems with the juicing diet.
No.
Not least of which is the fact that you are basically wasting all the fiber from all the produce you're throwing in that juicer. And we decided to do it. And what did we do? I think we went and gave all the fiber to the horses that were living next to our apartment complex.
That seems like a reasonable thing to have done.
I did that once. But our overweight friend was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to juice for 30 days and I'm going to lose so much weight. And then me wanting to be supportive decided to do the juicing challenge along with him. So it was going to be 30 days of no food, only juicing. What could go wrong, right?
Yeah.
I lasted less than 24 hours.
Yeah. He did it for like a week straight at least, right?
He did it for 12 days.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just
so
nothing.
It was impressive.
It was impressive. And
yep.
That wasn't his only strategy, but clearly it inspired something because he weighs the same as me now.
Yeah, so I mean, we can talk about that. I would say the juicing challenge for him,
inspiring challenge.
It did result in some weight loss, but it wasn't sustained.
Oh, well, he couldn't. It's kind of expensive to buy enough plants to make enough juice to drink that.
I think we calculated it was $20 a day in purchase or produce purchase.
Yeah,
which is just it's tough,
and especially in college, that's a lot of money to give to you.
It was stretching the budget. It also makes you incredibly hungry, as I discovered about 22 hours into the challenge.
Oh yes,
and I walked in.
Long, hard hours of not eating for almost a day.
I'm not good at fasting. I'm sorry. Well, he did it for 12 hours or 12 days, and I think he lost 10 pounds from it. And I don't remember if he gained it back or kept it off. I'm not sure, but it didn't result in a long-term sustained weight loss.
No.
And he spent a couple of years still struggling with weight, and then eventually he got so fed up that he just ate eggs and rice and nothing else. Just like egg and rice stir fry with no vegetables, no meat, no nothing. It was just that, like every meal for I don't know how long, as long as it took for him to lose 100 pounds.
Yeah.
And now he weighs 150, 160.
Yeah, and it's not like he did some crazy ultra vegetable, fancy vegan something. He just was like, I'm going to eat fewer calories.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to cut out like all the nonsense.
Yep.
Just eat eggs and rice, you know?
And I
Better
guess
than pizza rolls.
His journey is an example of the power of learning to cook a little bit, because he did at least learn how to make a decent tasting egg and rice stir fry.
Yeah, and I got nothing against an egg and rice stir fry. That's a good food.
It's
I
good.
don't know that
It's
I would
cheap.
eat only that, but you know.
Throw some veggies in
there. But it's
there.
good.
I want to talk about stir fry on here.
Cool.
At some point in this episode, because I saw a really good video that we will link to in the show notes. I actually know something to talk about now. Why not?
Do it. Freestyle.
So, just to put a little bit of intro out there for people, because I guess podcasts should be somewhat structured sometimes.
Nah.
We want to talk about cooking today because both you and me, I think me much more recently than you, have become very interested in cooking.
Yeah.
And we've been getting really into it and learning a lot of stuff. And I think it's going to be a cool episode because you cook differently than I do for dietary reasons.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different perspective there. But I have been just Googling lots of stuff about cooking. I bought this book that's sitting on the desk called The Science of Cooking by Dr. Stuart Fairmond, and also watching a lot of YouTube videos. And I came across a Jamie Oliver video on knife skills. It was part of his Dream School series. And it's a really old video on YouTube, I think 2008. But the video just starts out with 3 or 4 minutes, no talking. It's just Jamie Oliver dicing up a bunch of vegetables and mushrooms. And he throws them in a pan, throws in some beef, throws in some noodles. And then I forget the exact recipe, but it's like some soy sauce, a little bit of honey, and that might have been it. Maybe a little bit of olive oil or peanut oil. Peanut oil is probably not olive oil, peanut oil, because it's a little higher heat.
Yeah.
Just does a little shake, throws some maybe cilantro on there or parsley or something, and boom, he's done. So it was I think 4 minutes. Now, it would take me longer to do that because I cannot chop vegetables as fast as Jamie Oliver.
Yeah.
And if I could, I would probably be working in a restaurant or I'd have my own cooking show or something. But it was fast. So if you have some prepped meat, some noodles you can just throw in there, and you just take 5 minutes to chop up vegetables and then another 3 or 4 to cook it, boom, there's a meal done.
Yeah.
And that's 15 minutes. And that stir fry, unlike our friends, is nutritionally complete. Yeah, mushrooms, you got 3 types of vegetables.
Yeah, it's real easy to get everything to fit together.
Got your protein. Yeah. And so I think stir fry is actually one of the best places to start if you're really not into cooking, because it's hard to screw it up.
Yeah.
You're not making a souffle. You're not ruining a steak by doing it wrong. You're just throwing some vegetables and meat and noodles into a pan.
Yeah, and that's actually a really important point. If you're going to start cooking, you got to start easy.
Mm-hmm.
You got to start easy and you got to start tasty, because if your first meal is like, I'm going to eat nothing but kale, and you hate kale, you're not going to cook for long. You're going to be really mad. Like, even if you start off with slightly less healthy, but slightly better than what you have and easy, you can eventually get to more healthy, fancy stuff later.
True.
Cooking is the habit to build.
I will say kale plays an integral role in my first attempt to learn how to cook.
Okay.
And we will get to that. But you were first because you learned to cook in 2011.
Yeah.
Back when you went vegan.
Yeah, that was exciting.
So what did you do to start learning?
Very first thing that I made, it was like the first staple that I developed was just sauteed spinach with garlic in olive oil. You know, real simple, but I liked it, and I was proud that I was eating something that was green.
Yeah.
And that was a big deal to me. So honestly, I don't even remember a lot of the other foods I was eating at the time. Eggs and rice were a thing that I added later because I went vegetarian for about 2 years after that challenge.
How long were you vegan?
I was vegan for that first month, just for the month challenge. But then I was like, but I want to eat eggs again.
Yeah.
And that's a good nutrition source for me.
If I remember correctly, I think you were finding that on a college budget, it was difficult to get enough calories and like vitamin B12 potentially.
I also don't want to eat a lot of fake meats. And like my grandparents are farmers, and I get eggs from them, and I know how they treat the chickens, and I know how this stuff. So like I'm fine with that, and I'm okay with a sort of moral compromise position because it seems reasonable to me. I like it that way. But so I was vegan for the month, vegetarian for like 2 years. Within that 2 years, there were a few more months where I was vegan, but I didn't like what it did to me personally. And it's nothing against veganism. If you're vegan and you're fine with it, that's cool. But it was more like seeking something that seems sort of pure or perfect is really dangerous for me. It starts to, I started to feel myself judging my friends' food choices. Like I didn't say anything, but I could feel it like, oh, you're just eating that burger over there, man. And then I didn't like that effect, but also anything that seeks purity or perfection is just like dangerous, because then I wasn't willing to make compromise in a situation where it would have maybe been overall better.
I think that applies to not just cooking and eating.
Yeah, that's just like life.
Trying to adhere perfectly to principles in some cases is a good thing, but in many cases it is overly restrictive, and it sort of disregards the chaotic nature of life. Yeah. And it sort of disregards some of the limitations we have.
Yeah, and mostly I didn't like what it was doing to like my attitude. And I didn't like... I want to be able to occasionally go out to restaurants with my friends. The social aspect of human life is important to me. And I was like, in Iowa, in college, low budget. I got to eat at campus. So it was all a very difficult thing. And actually now I hear that Iowa State has a lot more options for that, like tofu and stuff every day. So maybe it's nicer now, but it wasn't that easy then. So I found it much easier to be like, I like vegetarianism as a compromise. And now I eat fish as well, basically pescatarian. As once again, it's just a compromise between eating real natural food and like reducing cognitive dissonance with the fact that I don't want to kill most things.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it's not a judgment thing. I don't care what other people do. I don't think meat's wrong, but it inspired me so much to cook. And all of my cooking came from that because, like I said, it was microwave frozen chicken, mayonnaise, chili powder, tortillas. And that's disgusting now. I don't like it. But basically, when you take any sort of diet challenge, because I've also tried paleo for a little bit just to kind of experiment. And even if you don't care about the morals or the nutritional theories behind these, maybe it'd be worth it to take like a week challenge for any of them or all of them, because I learned so many ingredients exist.
Yeah. Because it's limitation that breeds creativity, and it gives you a direction.
Well, and I learned about all these foreign foods, and like, growing up in Iowa and America, it's like, there are like 10 fruits and that's it, right? That's
apples, bananas, I think a pineapple every once in a while.
Like oranges, those are real. And then you start researching and going into like, okay, what do vegans eat? And you're like, what is that? I never heard of that before. And then like, okay, what about now, even if you're just doing like, I'm going to eat Japanese food or Indian food or some other food, there are so many ingredients we just don't use.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. And that made cooking exciting.
And I think that's the big thing. You got to make it exciting somehow.
If it's not exciting, it seems like a chore because you're taking time you weren't using before.
Yep. And the thing that kept me away from it for so long, Two things, actually. First and foremost, I do not like having to sit in the kitchen and just wait.
Yeah.
So any kind of recipe where there's a bunch of downtime, it bores me. And I fixed that recently just by choosing either a recipe that involves a lot of effort the whole time, or a recipe that's a very set it and forget it, like a crock pot recipe. That's easy. Chili can sit in the crock pot for 6 hours and I can go do something else. Or I will just add extra dishes. So salmon's in the oven for 20 minutes. Okay, well, I'll spend that 20 minutes making some sauteed vegetables, some spaghetti sometimes, or garlic bread or something like that. I like to be in the kitchen working the whole time. But the other thing is, I forgot what the other thing was.
Oh, good. Well, that's fine. I'll give you some time. Because another thing, other than the excitement for ingredients, was, and maybe this seems little, but our food culture, especially here in America, is very, whoa, don't do that yourself. You don't have time to cut onions, silly. Come buy them. Mm-hmm. Come buy them from me. I got all the food ready. You don't have time for that, right? That's too much work. Don't do it. Yep. But then when I was like, oh, I just learned how to cut an onion. Oh, I just learned how to cut garlic. I just learned how to use, that's like a bulb, right? Do you eat the whole thing? I don't know. And then I'm going to learn how to use these ingredients, getting rid of all the learned helplessness of I could never cook something good, or I don't have time, or I can't cook things. And I was like, I could feed myself buying these incredibly cheap things and make it taste good. And I did the cutting. I did the work.
Yep. And it makes it so much cheaper.
That's also confidence building. And it's just so good to be able to do that, to be able to feed yourself. It's one of the most basic, human things, you got to eat.
Yep.
And I don't think I want companies doing all the cooking for me, because obviously their motives are driven by profit and not by my well-being or happiness.
It's kind of weird. It's been 50 years, maybe 60, where you could sort of forget about cooking. You could forget about food prep because it's just been it's been made so easy.
Yeah.
But before that, literally all the time before that,
somebody was cooking.
Someone in your family is cooking. And you're probably out, gardening or harvesting something. Life was so centered around food, and now it's not.
Yeah, but you feel it's such a connection to natural life. When I buy the raw ingredients and cook them and prep them all myself, I feel more connected to the food. I care more about the food and about the fact that I am a part of nature.
So I remembered what I forgot.
Cool.
The other thing that always put me off of cooking was, growing up as a very nerdy, computer interested kind of person, I always had this sense that if I'm going to code something, I'm going to make a mistake, but I can fix it. It's like this constant process of fixing bugs, and then it's done. With cooking, I always had this anxiety that I'm going to go spend all this time and money. I'm going to buy ingredients. I'm going to spend all this time in the kitchen. And what if I screw it up? I've just wasted all those ingredients. I've wasted all that time, and now I don't have dinner. Now I have to order pizza or something. And it brought me anxiety. But getting into cooking recently, I've learned how to mitigate against that. And the main thing is, in the past when I've tried to cook, it's very much been this, all right, I need to cook dinner as fast as possible so that way I can go do something else. Go play video games or go watch a movie. I want to have time to play some video games tonight. Whereas now, I don't go slow in the kitchen. I work efficiently because I enjoy that process. But my mindset is different. When I go into the kitchen now, I'm making food. And however long it takes, again, the essentialism thing. I'm going to be present. This is what's essential right now. And when it's done, it's done. We can sit down. We can slowly enjoy the food that we made. And then if there's time left over, sure, I'll play a video game or something.
This episode's just going to make me really hungry.
Especially when we start talking about the food we're making.
I got to power through that.
Oh, we're recording this at lunchtime, aren't we?
Yeah.
Oops. Sorry, bro. Did you even eat breakfast?
I had a smoothie. It's all I've had.
Fair enough. I had 2 pieces of toast.
This is going to get me motivated to cook my lunch.
Well, we got back from driving home from all the Christmas stuff.
I am so sick of candy, cookies, and protein bars. I hate travel food. I hate it.
Well, we also got home last night, and all the food was rotten or bad, or there was just nothing left in the fridge. So I had, luckily, 2 pieces of bread left.
I felt so disgusting.
Yep. Yeah, Christmas candy and cookies and stuff, it's good in the moment. But then you come home and you realize, I just spent 4 days eating what you could condense down into just a giant ball of sugar,
Yeah.
I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I've been thinking much more in terms of be in the moment, do it for however long it takes, and enjoy it. And I also have a little Bluetooth speaker, so I'll put that up on the fridge and play music, and that just makes it a lot more enjoyable for me.
Or you could put a podcast on if you wanted.
I've been listening to The Martian, which is a fantastic book. Is that
the one, like the movie?
Yeah, the one they made that Matt Damon movie based off of.
Okay.
And I still want to watch the movie, but I'm not going to watch it until I finish the book for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I have been told that the movie glosses over a lot of the problem solving. And what I love a lot about this book is he goes into detail about all the engineering and all the problem solving he's doing. And it's really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
He talks about how he's transferring hydrazine into hydrogen and oxygen to create more water. And it's all this really cool stuff. So for people who think kind of in like an engineering mode, they would love that book.
That's cool.
And I think a bit like that. But yeah, I'll just put that in, I'll cook, and I'll just get into it and do it. But I want to talk about like some of the basics, how to learn, how to start, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So the way that I started learning, the first attempt was Anna and I subscribed to Blue Apron, which for those who don't know is one of those like subscription services where they send you a box of ingredients for a meal that they basically picked out.
Yeah, you get the recipe too.
Yeah, so they give you the recipe and then they give you like a pre-packaged and already like quantified number of ingredients. So you have exactly as much chives as you need, exactly as much meat as you need, and you can do it for like 2 people or you can do it for 4 people. So we did it. I think it was 2 meals a week for 2 people, and it was never my intention to do it forever. But again, it was that whole idea of focusing in on one method, because with cooking, there's so many ingredients and so many recipes. Like if you pick up a book, there's like all these pages, you don't know what to do. It's so easy to get overwhelmed. And back then I didn't have the burning interest that I have now. I just wanted to cook a little more because I was tired of eating out and ordering food and spending tons of money, like buying salad bar at the grocery store. So we just did that for a while, and that actually gave us some ideas. So there was a few recipes, and I mentioned kale earlier. So for whatever, I think it was because of the season when we started the subscription, every meal had kale.
Oh yeah.
It must have just been in season.
I mean, it's a good vegetable.
And I honestly I don't like kale raw. It's bitter.
I don't like most vegetables raw, honestly.
So when we got the boxes and they gave us all these kale recipes, I was like, oh, I don't like kale. But what I learned is that you can cook kale, or you can even not even cook. You can massage kale into a marinade and make it taste really good. So doing Blue Apron just sort of taught me that there are things you can do with ingredients that you don't think you like radishes. Or I always hated radishes. Or tofu.
That's a big one.
I've had some tofu that's really good. And in the past, I always thought that I hated it.
Everyone thinks they hate it because if you don't cook it right, it is just some gross, weird, bland, mushy nonsense.
It really is.
But you can make it real good.
Mm-hmm. My friend Sean went vegan a while back, and unfortunately, our Whole Foods doesn't have this, but he has some grocery store by him in San Diego that has like this really hard, not very watery chicken teriyaki flavored tofu.
Oh yeah,
it's so good. Oh man, he gave me some and I was like, I would eat this every day if I could.
That's actually, I don't know if you tried it, but there was that while back I made some breaded and like chicken flavor stuff, marinated stuff. It ended up, Anna was saying it tasted like if you took a bite of chicken soup, but it was a tofu block with breading.
I don't think I tried it.
It was real good. Like you
should
can
show me how to make that.
Basically any ingredient you think you hate can be probably made in a way you wouldn't hate it. It's just that we're losing the art of cooking because we think that, oh, I just took this piece of fish and I microwaved it for 30 seconds and it didn't come out like a 5-star meal.
Yep.
Of course it didn't. You didn't do anything to it. Like you can make almost anything taste good.
Yeah.
Probably not everything. Don't test me on some nonsense ingredient I don't want to eat.
Well, it depends on who you are too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably ingredients that I'm just never going to like, but then somebody else would like them.
Yeah.
I just finished listening to Anthony Bourdain's book, and when he was a kid, his parents left him in the car when they went to a restaurant because him and his brother were being brats, and that kind of inspired him out of spite to eat everything, to be more of an adventurous eater than them. So he started eating oysters and all sorts of weird stuff, and they were in France at the time, so he just really expanded his palate. So he's the kind of guy who will eat basically anything. I don't know if I'm that adventurous, but
I have my limits to the adventurousness.
yeah. Well, I had an oyster for my first time this year, and I didn't like it. But it could have been that I had it in the wrong context because it was fried, and some people have told me you got to have oysters raw. That's the only way to have them. So I don't know. I didn't like it, so I'm like a little hesitant to try them again.
Well, you don't have to like every ingredient either because like there are so many. You're going to be just fine.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. So I did the Blue Apron thing. I think we did it for 3 months. That was pretty useful. I kept some of the recipes from it.
Cool.
But eventually I got tired of having to deal with so much packaging. Because, I mean, that's the real trade-off is you're being mailed a cardboard box with this giant, like, bag of chemical ice stuff to keep everything cold.
Was it weekly that you got the package?
It was weekly, yeah.
Okay.
And then everything is in a plastic bag. So there's all this waste and trash that you generate. And I just got to thinking, like, I can go to the grocery store, and if I know what to buy, I can buy everything sustainably. I can plan my week out so I'm using my ingredients and not throwing half the ingredients away, and I'm not generating all this trash. But Blue Apron was a very good initial experience for learning how to cook and getting myself out of those bad eating habits.
Yeah.
So I'd recommend it at least for like a trial period. Now what I've been doing is, number one, I got this book called The Science of Cooking. And I don't remember why I got it. I think you and I were at Barnes & Noble looking for something else. And I just saw it on the shelf. And I was like, that looks really cool. I have found this to be better than a recipe book.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. I have it on hold at the library just because I want to flip through it sometime later with my other cookbooks.
Oh, there you go. You can borrow this one if you want at some point. But what I found is this is more interesting to me than a recipe book because recipe books are overwhelming. They just have too much in them. And I'm like looking through all the recipes and I'm like, oh, I can make that tonight or I can make that tonight. And then more often than not, I'm just like, I don't even know.
Well, and sometimes they've got like, oh, this recipe requires 5 new spices you don't have that you're not going to use for anything else.
Yep.
And that seems dumb until you know how to like balance everything and make use of the ingredients.
Actually, I think there's a website out there where you can put in the ingredients you have and it will generate recipe ideas for you.
I think that is a thing that I forgot about.
I don't remember the name of it, so we'll have to have our show notes guy go look for it.
I should find that again because that would be helpful right now.
Mm-hmm. And then I think it also suggests like, okay, you're missing 2 ingredients for this recipe. Well, that's easy. I'll just go out and get 2 ingredients.
So it's like, here's how to use what's already in your fridge before it goes bad.
Yeah. Whereas, the way Anna and I have done it is, hey, we want to make Chinese wontons, and then we find a recipe and we realize there's 20 spices here that we don't own, and then we're at the normal American grocery store just like looking everywhere for them, and they're horribly overpriced, and it's just super stressful. So what I've been doing is, first I read through a lot of this book, and this just taught me a bunch of technique stuff that I had never known before. Like a good example is it taught me about cooking fish in parchment paper. And I think the French term is like en papouette or something like that. I'm very bad at French. Very, very bad at French. We tried that and it makes salmon so good.
Yeah?
Yep. And before that, we would always just pop it in the oven on a cookie sheet, just totally naked, and it would turn out a little bit dry. So that one little tweak, just building a little parchment paper envelope around your salmon, it made it so much better. And there's just a ton in this book that just teaches you like how to cook food and why things happen. Why this temperature is better for this kind of food and a lower temperature is better for this kind of food. What the different pots and pans are for and that kind of stuff. Because a lot of times you look at a recipe and it'll say like braise this, blanch that. And you're like, I don't know what that means.
Well, of course it's overwhelming at that point. I don't understand the language you're using.
Yeah, exactly. So
mostly French.
Just going through here and getting a little bit of initial knowledge on how to prep some things and why some things work the way they do has given me a lot more confidence. And with all the recipes I've been making, I haven't really screwed anything up recently. No. Maybe it means I'm not challenging myself enough, but we've made some pretty good stuff recently and haven't burned anything, haven't had anything come out raw. Like it's all been pretty decent.
I think once you get the confidence and you kind of understand, like it's great that book does that, because if you don't know how any of it works, even if you look up the things, you're mostly at the mercy of these recipe writers. And you're like, I'm not the cook. They're the cook. And I have no idea what's going on. But somehow that turned into a cake.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
Yep.
But it's useful to do that. And what was it? I made a clafoutis aux fraises, which is strawberry like French thing. It was good.
A bready, spongy sort of thing. That was tasty.
I liked it a lot, and I was really happy with it. And I replaced some ingredients, but it seems like, just even from the name, you'd be like, oh, I don't know how to make them fancy French dessert. That seems crazy. Here's what I did. I followed the instructions, and then because we're at altitude, I ignored their timer. I set the timer, and then I kept coming back and checking.
Yep.
Because that is one thing that will probably kill your confidence, is if you believe that you just need to hit the timer and leave. Because a lot of times it doesn't work like that. So if you just pay attention, and then you won't burn everything and make yourself think you're a terrible cook. But I made some fancy French dessert because I looked up a recipe, swapped out stuff, and then made it. It wasn't like I prayed to some French gods. I don't understand. It just worked.
Well, you do have to pray to the French gods, though.
Oh, well, I didn't. So maybe it'll be better next time.
It will be better next time if you pray to the French gods. I don't know who they are. We'll have to Google that.
Yeah, I have actually no idea.
Or something like that. Maybe you have to pray to like the old French chef masters.
I don't know them either.
I actually can't think of any French chef masters.
I got nothing. But I
think of like Gordon Ramsay, but he's British.
I have no idea. But the point is, this is all a lot more accessible than it seems, because companies especially want you to think that this is all the fanciest, craziest, impossible stuff, because then obviously you buy their frozen TV dinners and you buy their desserts and you buy their stuff. But it's like anyone can learn to do this.
Yeah, exactly. It's not that complicated. It's just like anything else, a skill that you gotta learn. Right?
Oh, another thing is don't think that the reason you can't cook is because you're missing some really expensive unitasking cooking tool, because the tools don't make you cook. You can start a cooking habit without buying that like $3 billion KitchenAid mixer, because you don't need a KitchenAid mixer to make the things you would make with it.
Nope. No, you don't.
Because people lived before them. Maybe it'd be useful someday, but start cooking first. Please don't go to Target, buy a bunch of stuff, and then be like, I'm really broke, and I still only microwave food. You need to build a cooking habit.
This week's episode is sponsored by Audible. I am a huge fan of Audible, so it's really awesome to have them back as a sponsor on the show. Audible is the best resource on the internet that you can go to for finding audiobooks, for finding spoken audio content, original radio broadcasts, all sorts of stuff that is amazing to listen to while you're cooking, as I think already mentioned in this episode.
Yep.
While you're driving 10 hours home for Christmas, or in my case, 15 hours on black ice the entire time. Yay.
Yep.
Or working out, or going for a walk, or basically anytime you're doing something boring and mindless where you have a little bit of attentional reserves free, Audible is a great way to fill those attentional reserves. They've got stuff in all sorts of different genres, both fictional, like science fiction and horror and fantasy and all kinds of historical fiction, and nonfiction. Most books these days that are popular actually have an audiobook edition, and I find that audiobooks are just as good of a way to intake books, for the most part, as reading them is. And I do want to give out one recommendation for this week. I honestly listen to a lot of stuff on Audible, so I could recommend a bunch of stuff, but my number one recommendation right now is The Martian by Andy Weir. I gotta say, the Audible edition, like the audiobook edition, is so good.
Yeah?
Yeah. The narrator is amazing, and he's like weirdly really good at doing the female voices and the male voices in a way that isn't awkward.
Maybe it was his dream.
And I heard somebody talking about The Martian, one of my friends, who was basically just like, this narrator is Mark Watney, who's the main character of the book. And I would have to agree to that, or agree with that. I don't know. It's just an amazing book. And if you have any sort of like inclination towards engineering, or you're detail oriented at all, I think you're really going to love this book, because he walks through all of his mental processes for how he's going to survive, how he's going to make water, how he's going to make food. And I just found that ridiculously fascinating. And then the whole idea of just being that far away from your home planet, it just, I don't know, it just like, it creates this feeling of being so small in the universe. And I don't know, I'm really enjoying the book a lot. It's probably going to be one of my favorite fiction books of all time after I finish it.
Sounds pretty cool.
As long as it's not horrible when it ends, but I don't think it will be, because so far it's been fantastically good. So if you want to get a free trial for 30 days and a free audiobook download, whether it is The Martian or any other book that you want. You can go over to audible.com/CIG, or if you're listening to this on your phone, you can text CIG to 500-500 to get started. And again, you get a 30-day free trial along with one free audiobook credit. And the cool thing is, even if you decide to cancel after that 30 days, you do get to keep that audiobook forever. So whether it's The Martian or something else that you've been really wanting to listen to, you really can't ask for anything more than that. So once again, audible.com/CIG or text 500-500, that show URL CIG to get started. Big thanks to Audible for sponsoring this show, and let's get back into it. On the note of the KitchenAid, so I'm guessing a KitchenAid is like to mix dough and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I was watching a channel called Alex French Guy Cooking, which I highly recommend to anybody who wants to learn more about cooking. He's really entertaining, and he wanted to make his own ramen noodles. So he makes the dough and he gets it to the point where it's ready for kneading, but for whatever reason, for the ingredients he used, it was so hard that he couldn't do it with his hands.
Oh, yeah?
So he just put it in a plastic bag and then stepped on it a bunch. There you go.
Hey, that's way cheaper.
Yeah, you don't got to buy a KitchenAid for that.
Yeah, I mean, they're cool. You could get a fancy tool if you want. Just it's not the answer to you cooking.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of tools, let's get into that now, because a lot of people want to know, like, what do I actually need?
Yeah, what tools should you buy before cooking?
Yeah. All right, so we can talk about our favorite tools as well. I don't know if I've got some favorite tools that maybe are a little bit beyond the basics, but when it comes to the basics, number one, you need a chef's knife. And that's basically it for the most part.
Yeah, so when you could feasibly use the chef knife for like all knifing purposes.
Yep. So I mean, when you go to the store, you often see like these giant knife sets that have a chef's knife, and they have a butcher's meat cleaver in them, and they have a medium-sized knife and a paring knife and a boning knife and a filleting knife and all these weird, crazy knives. The thing is, you're never going to use any of them.
Yeah.
What you're going to use 99% of the time is your chef's knife. And maybe you will use a small paring knife sometimes. I got to say, so whenever I look up like chefs and what they recommend for knives, they will often say a chef's knife, a serrated bread knife, and a paring knife. But I almost never use the paring knife myself.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a recipe out there that I will start using it for. And when I watched that cook documentary, you know, the girl that was doing the pot cooking in the second episode where she was cutting up potatoes and stuff. Yeah. I saw her like cutting the potatoes with a paring knife towards her thumb, which was a little bit worrying to me.
Maybe she's
probably just a
ultra
pro
expert. I wouldn't risk it.
I got to tell you, when I cube potatoes for mashed potatoes or a soup, I use the chef's knife every single time. So if you want my recommendation for knives, a chef's knife that you keep sharp and a serrated bread knife, because it's pretty hard to cut bread with a chef's knife.
Yeah.
Pretty difficult. And then a paring knife if you want it, but it's not the most important thing. I would also get a knife steel, and I wasn't able to get you one for Christmas. I wanted to get you one.
Is that the alternative to the sharpening thing? I don't know what that is.
It's not really an alternative. It's kind of like an and instead of an or thing.
Okay.
So first and foremost, like the main principle with knives is keep your knife sharp. Every time you use your knife, you are somewhat dulling the edge. And the edge gets dull in a couple of ways. It can actually dull, but it can also, on a microscopic level, be folded over. So basically, like, your metal is coming to a point, and if you like think about the edge of your knife in detail, it should come to a point that's pointing down. But eventually that point is so thin that if you were to put some pressure on one side of the knife blade, it would fold that edge over ever so slightly. So that knife steel, which is that stick, basically, what that does is that hones the edge back into alignment.
Okay.
So that's something that I personally use every other time that I use a chef's knife. And then the sharpener is the thing I got you, which is that little V thing. And like like super into cooking people will tell you the best way to sharpen a knife is like on a whetstone. I haven't even gotten that far yet. I just have one of them little grinder things.
Yeah.
But it's basically just a V at the right angles, and you put the knife in there and you just pull the knife through, and it will grind a little bit of the metal off to sharpen your knife. And you want to do that a little less often because obviously you're grinding part of your knife away.
Yeah.
but it does keep it sharp. So for me, it's like hone the knife with the steel every other time-ish, and then, I don't know, every couple of months maybe I'll sharpen.
Yeah.
And that's totally preference.
If it seems counterintuitive that you want the knife to be really sharp for safety, it is counterintuitive, but if it's dull, you're going to put a lot of effort into stuff, and then if it's sharp, you're just going to go right through that bread. But if it's not sharp, you're going to keep trying, and then you're going to cut your thumb off.
Well, that's the reason I recommend the serrated knife for bread.
Yeah.
Because I've used the chef's knife for bread, and you're like pressing on that, and the more force you apply to something, the less finesse you have, and the more likely you are to.
Yeah. So don't be scared of super sharp things. They are way better for not cutting yourself in the kitchen.
A properly sharp knife, if you were to hold up a piece of paper, you could just let the knife glide through the paper and cut it.
Yeah.
Most knives are not sharp, so it won't work. But there's some pretty cool videos on Wrangler Star, which our friend Ryan used to watch for whatever reason.
Oh, yeah.
There's one video where he has this crazy knife sharpening kit thing, and he sharpens a butter knife to the point where it can just cut through paper super easily.
Can it cut through butter still?
Yes.
Cool.
I can confirm that it will also cut through butter. I don't think a knife can get too sharp for butter. So that's your knives. A cutting board is useful.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
I guess you could cut on a counter or a plate. For a long time, I cut on plates because I didn't care. But
you're gonna potentially damage them.
Yeah,
and cutting boards are not going to be that expensive, and they last for a while.
Yeah, they do.
It's a good thing to have.
Mm-hmm. And there's all kinds of cutting boards. There's plastic ones. There's wooden ones. I like a wooden one because it's classic and it looks good. But a plastic one is cheaper and has a good starting point.
Yeah.
Let's talk about pans.
I like pans.
And pots. So you got 3 different types of material for your pans and pots that are your basics, at least. Stainless steel, nonstick, and cast iron. So your nonsticks are what I stupidly cooked everything with for a really long time. And I always wondered, why are my nonstick pans getting ruined all the time? Like I have to buy a new nonstick pan every couple of months because they're warping or the finish is coming off. Nonstick pans, as I have learned, are for low heat cooking.
Yeah, the nonstick material doesn't. First of all, it doesn't conduct heat all that well, so it's not going to get super high. But also, you're going to burn all this. It's going to fall apart, just like you have had it happen over and over.
Yeah, it's
a great place to start if you're just sautéing and making very simple stuff, though. Like if that's the only pan you can get, you can still make eggs on it.
Yeah, and they're cheap.
It's going to be just fine.
But then again, I'm not going to say it's the best place to start, though, because.
Again, if you already have it, don't feel bad.
Yeah, if you already have it, don't feel bad. You can do a lot in it. Just
you can still cook.
Don't do a super high heat stir fry in there. And you're not going to get a good sear on a steak in a nonstick pan.
Yeah, because a lot of students, especially, that's the obvious thing they have in Target aimed toward people. But that pan will still work for you to start cooking with.
Well, for me, so what I learned is you can actually get the other kinds of pans at the same price. But when I was in college and I didn't know anything, I thought, oh, nonstick means it'll be easier to clean. So I'll just make everything in nonstick. But what I've learned now is that, yeah, technically a nonstick will be easier to clean, but with your cast iron and with your stainless steel especially, it can be pretty easy to clean if you do it right. Like I made steak in the nonstick or in the stainless steel pan, and when the steak comes off, you've got a bunch of steak bits that are basically just stuck to the bottom of the pan.
Yeah.
And if you were to take that and go try to wash it right away, that would be really tough to get off. But you don't want to do that because those little steak bits actually make a really good sauce if you put some deglazing stuff in there, like red wine vinegar and some beef broth.
So you're using it up.
You're using, I think it's called the fond or the foundation. You're using that to create a sauce. It's going to make your steak taste better in the first place. And it also deglazes the bottom of your pan. Now it's easy to wash.
That's real fancy.
It's just something to learn.
That's like how I used to use after cooking bacon or something, I would always throw eggs in to use up the rest of the stuff in the pan.
Use that grease.
I was never worried about fat, but whatever.
I'm still not worried about fat.
It's whatever, man.
It's delicious. And from that book I read, Good Calories, Bad Calories, I just need to worry about the sugar and the simple carbs.
I think that's the easiest place to start, is that we all eat too much sugar.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you don't want to be eating giant spoons of butter and drinking bacon grease, but
no,
I don't think eating bacon a couple of times a week is going to be that big of a deal.
You know what? A good way to handle this about cooking in general and life, as we mentioned in a previous episode, maybe the essentialism one, I'm not entirely sure, but you want to help out your Russell first, your slowest hiker. So your biggest problem, sure, you've got a bunch of problems, right? A lot of little things you'd like to fix that could help, but the one that would help the very most should be the only one you focus on at first.
Yep.
And then after that's fixed, then you focus on the next one. So right now, if you're like, I'm eating cookies 1,000 times a day and I microwave all my food, then like first, stop eating cookies. And then second, learn how to cook food.
Yep.
And then third, learn how to do this next thing and throw vegetables in it.
Yeah.
And then just like, don't freak yourself out, because if you try to, I'm going to suddenly make nothing but 5-star French and Japanese food for the next 7 months. I am not going to do that.
That's not happening.
It's not happening. It's just start easy.
Yep, start real easy. Okay, so your nonstick pan, and we'll assume that in this case you can afford a couple of pans. Your nonstick pan is for things like eggs, for things like pancakes, low heat stuff that you want to be able to easily flip.
Yeah, low to like in the middle of low, medium. Like just doesn't go high. It's going to be fine.
Stainless steel is going to be your most versatile type of pan. And I say that because cast iron is also very versatile, but the problem with cast iron, as you discovered, is to use it properly, you have to season it, which means you got to put some oil on it and you got to throw it in the oven to kind of bake that oil into a layer. And then you got to do that a few times to properly get that surface ready for cooking. And that can be kind of a pain.
And you're more likely to get smoke in that when setting it up properly. And I'm in an apartment and I'm like, I don't want to make everybody evacuate because I'm trying.
I don't think
it's also harder to clean.
I don't think most people listening to this podcast live in their own homes with a gas range stove and a perfectly working vent and all that stuff. I think most of them are living in cheap apartments or dorms. They've got a coil or glass top stove. And cast iron
you might break the glass top stove with your cast iron. You drop it and
you can use a cast iron on glass top stove. You got to be careful.
You can. It's just really heavy and it's real heavy. Well, it's iron.
Yep, it's iron. So I would say go for stainless steel and a nonstick. If I were on a budget and I was building a kitchenware set from scratch, I would get one stainless steel pan and one nonstick pan. And that's what I cook with now. And then I would get a couple of stainless steel pots.
Yeah.
Or maybe like what I have now, what I cook with on a weekly basis is I have one 4-quart all-clad stainless steel pan. And then I've got one nonstick pan from Target. That's like a 12-inch diameter. I also have I believe a nonstick half-gallon cooking pot that I'll do for soups. And then we've got a set of stainless steel pots that are not thick bottomed, so they're not like super high quality, but they work. And I use that for doing scrambled eggs sometimes, actually, and for like cooking spaghetti, stuff like that. Any kind of boiling pasta.
Now with stainless steel, you're gonna have several options depending on how fancy you want to get.
Yes.
The basic stainless steel, with nothing else, it will work, but it doesn't conduct heat all that great, so it'll take longer to warm it up and stuff like that. So you can often find stainless steel that's got either a core, like a little circle at the bottom of the pan, and that could be made of aluminum. That is the cheaper version, but also conducts heat a lot better. Or copper, which is more expensive and fancy. Yep. But you can also, my stainless steel pan is a layer of stainless steel whole way around, a layer of aluminum, and then a layer of stainless steel. So the entirety of it gets the heat conductivity of the aluminum, but the qualities of the stainless steel. So if you see differences in there, that is why. So
and as for stainless steel, the way Anthony Bourdain puts it, it should be thick bottomed. And if you were to, the way he puts it is, if you were to pick up that stainless steel pan and crack it over someone's head, if there's any doubt in your mind as to which of the two will break first, throw that pan in the trash. That's what he says.
Don't try it out, though.
Probably don't try that out. But thick bottom is good. And what you will learn, if like me, you've cooked on nonstick your whole life or on really thin bottomed crappy pans, is a thick bottomed stainless steel pan takes a little bit longer to heat up. But once it does not lose the heat like a nonstick pan does. So you can't just crank up the high heat and just let it sit there because it's going to get real hot.
Yeah.
And then it will burn your food immediately. So it takes a bit of getting used to. And this book actually taught me how to tell when your stainless steel pan is ready.
Yeah.
You just take a little droplet of water and you put it on there. And when it's hot enough, that little droplet of water is going to form a ball on the surface of the pan that kind of skates around. And I forget the name of it. There's some scientific name for why that happens. But before that, it'll sizzle and steam up a little bit. And then there's going to become a point where you'll drop the water and it'll scatter into a bunch of little balls. And then a little bit after that, it'll kind of coalesce into one.
Mm.
And that's like the perfect temperature. Okay. So you can just kind of test while you're cooking. And this is like a fundamental thing I've learned. Test for temperature. Taste your food as you're cooking it. Because otherwise, how do you know what it tastes like? Yeah. And
maybe watch it with certain raw meats.
Don't taste the raw meat.
I wouldn't be like, is this chicken still half raw?
I'm not tasting.
Yes, it is. Now I'm dead.
I'm not tasting my steak as I'm cooking it. And I'm also not poking it and prodding it either. There's a way to tell when your steak is done. You can basically touch the little meaty part of your hand under your thumb. And depending on which finger you pinch your thumb to. So if you pinch your thumb to your pinky finger and you feel that, that's what well done feels like.
Okay.
And I don't ever cook well done. I cook medium rare or lower. And if you don't pinch your thumb at all, then it will feel like what rare feels like or what raw feels like.
This is interesting. I feel
so
like
basically
I'm
like
something.
Well done, and then third finger to thumb is going to be medium well, middle finger to thumb is going to be your medium, and then index finger to thumb is going to be your medium rare to rare area.
Oh.
So
well,
I'm usually going for index finger to thumb because I like a medium rare steak. I don't like well cooked meat. It's not good. In my opinion, it is the way to ruin a steak.
Fair.
But yeah, I'm not tasting that. But if I'm making like a soup or something, I'm tasting that soup while I'm making it because I don't want to get it on the plate and realize, oh, wow, it was not salty at all. I need more salt in there. Or I probably could have thrown more garlic in there.
Yeah.
So it's learning how to watch your food as you cook it. And then also not trusting the timers, as you said.
Oh, yeah, because if
everyone's oven's different.
It said 50 minutes, right? My clafoutis was perfectly done at 30.
There you go.
I would have destroyed it if I almost doubled the time I put it in there, especially because we're at altitude. So baking stuff and all this, I've got to be like, well, I don't know how being high up affects this, if at all. So I'm going to pay attention. Don't just.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to be active when you're cooking.
Mm-hmm. So one last note of the pans. I know we have an international audience, so I can't make like a global recommendation of where to get your pans. I did mention that I have an all-clad pan, and that's like a pretty expensive brand. I was able to get it at a huge discount based on some weird stroke of luck and the fact that it was a floor model with some scratches on it, which I didn't care about.
Nice.
But what I've been told is at Walmart, they sell this brand of pans, and I think it may come in like a 3-pack. It starts with a T. I can't remember the name. I'll try to have it in the show notes. And what I've heard is they are like 1/3 the price of all-clad pans and are nearly as good.
Oh, cool.
Maybe they don't have like the perfect heat distribution, but they are darn good, and they're going to be a lot better than buying some, really thin-bottomed.
Well, I mean, you don't need the perfect anything because people were cooking far before they had really good tools.
Exactly. Yeah. You could have a crappy pan. That'd be fine. Yeah. But if you have the money and you're trying to be a discerning buyer and you want to buy quality, you want to have that thick bottom, and having a core of aluminum does help to
I think
spread
mine
that
was
heat out.
like a little under 40 for my one pan.
Yeah,
the Walmart ones might be cheaper. They're probably just as good too.
And again, it's the same story with the knives. You don't need a gigantic set of 15 pans and pots and everything. Most nights I use that 1 4-quart aluminum pan. The reason I got the 4-quart one is because I can do a steak in there, or I can do a whole like giant thing of spaghetti with sauce in there because it's got sort of tall walls, and it makes it heavier. So when I pick it up and shake it, it takes some muscle, but it makes it really versatile.
Yeah.
And you can look up like one pan wonder meals. Just Google one pan wonder, and you will find a bunch of different meals that are full courses. You'll have like some carbs, some vegetables, some meat in there. You can do it all in one pan. And if you have a nice taller pan, like a 4-quart, you can do, a meal for 2 people, maybe even 3 people.
Yeah, and you can use that for smaller meals. You can having fewer pans and pots is my favorite because those giant sets you get, they seem like a good deal, but they're also a great deal if you want your kitchen to be a gigantic mess and then you like try to pull out your one pot and you knock 3 or 4 over.
Exactly. Where do you put them all?
And that just makes me not want to do anything because the kitchen's a whole mess the whole time and I can't find the right pot. The lid's missing. Who knows?
I have a dream.
Keeping it simple.
One day I will have a kitchen where I can hang my pots and pans up, and I'll just have my favorite ones just hanging there right by the gas range because I'm going to have a gas range with flame. Right now, I got counter space that's limited. I have no place to hang up pans, and I have a glass top stove. So I work with what I got.
Yeah.
I do what I can with what I got.
It's the only
Pounding
thing
out new sounds. I never stop. All right, so we talked about cutting boards, talked about knives, talked about pans and pots. Mixing bowls are very useful. That's probably a decent thing to have because I'm always chopping up vegetables and I need a place to put them.
Oh yeah. Well, I like the little bowls too because in the spirit of mise en place, I like to like crack my eggs, put them in a bowl, take a lot of the spices I'm going to start with that I might adjust as I go on, put them in one thing so I could toss it all in at once, and then if it's right, then I don't have to do anything else, and just put everything into their own little bowls so that as I'm cooking, because I don't want anything to burn, I can just be like, there you go, there's a bunch of ingredients.
Yeah, exactly.
No problem.
So, do you have any like favorite tools? Because I mean, those are the basics right there. You can do a lot with just those. And some measuring spoons too.
I don't think that I use a lot of special things other than, okay, so I got my stainless steel thing. I got my pan. I love my pan. And so I've got one silicone high heat resistant spatula. I use that for pushing stuff around.
That's a good idea.
But if I was making something I wanted to flip, even just a grilled cheese, I've got a thin metal spatula. And I don't care. It doesn't really matter if you scratch the stainless steel a tiny bit. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So I got the thin metal spatula because if you try to get under something and flip it with the thick silicone thing, you're probably just going to detach it from all that delightful brown stuff that's stuck at the bottom now because you've cut it in half. So I love my thin metal spatula for stuff like that. And this is a thing that I find essential for the foods that I like to cook. And if you do anything similar, you might too. I have a nice tofu press that I got on Amazon.
Oh, yeah.
So it's got 2 sheets of this plastic, and you just kind of screw it, and you screw it tighter and tighter, and as the tofu loses all the extra water that's inside, because otherwise the websites are all going to tell you to like put a plate on it and a towel and then like a bunch of cans or something to weigh it down. And if you make tofu with any frequency, that's just really annoying to me. It's not like a good tool for it.
And that's cheap. It's just 2 pieces of plastic with some screw tops.
Yeah, it wasn't expensive. But for the most part, that's the best part about cooking is you don't need fancy nonsense.
Yeah.
You just find good ingredients you like. And speaking of ingredients, actually, it's not quite a tool in the literal physical sense, but as I cooked and discovered ingredients and learned what I like and what I don't like, I have a little iCloud note. It's more or less like my food pyramid, even though I think they use a plate now. But it's like protein. Here is a list of proteins I like. Vegetables. Here's a list of vegetables I like. Fruits, drinks, other things like honey or spices. And this is because if I have no idea what I want to make and I go to the grocery store and I'm like, I don't know, well, I need something for dinner. So I just like go through the protein, pick a protein, get a couple of vegetables, look at the carbs I like. And I don't have to re-Google all the ingredients over and over to remember that I like falafel. I just say, oh yeah, falafel's a thing. I'll just make that. And it's just a lot quicker.
Yeah, that works. Because a lot of times you're just like, I don't know what I want to eat, and I already had my one thing that I made 15 times in a row. I don't want that.
There are so many ingredients that like if you start from scratch trying to think of every food in existence, it's going to be hard. So a nice starting place will be useful.
One thing I've been doing is I have a recipes notebook in Evernote.
Oh yeah.
So whenever I make a recipe I will put the recipe there because I hate having to go and find the website where I found the recipe and then read through this was a recipe that my grandma made back in Ukraine.
They tell so many stories.
You know, her family history actually goes back to royalty. And let me give you a story about Marie Antoinette and something. And then the recipe's like down at the bottom, there's 15 pop-up ads that are moving it all over the screen when you're trying to find it. So if I find a recipe I like, I'd take it to Evernote. It's there and it's safe.
Yeah. Well, also you can edit it there. So that clafouti recipe, because I had to alter it, like I made it dairy-free, but I had to do something special because certain dairy replacements, like soy milk or almond milk, don't really have fat in them that's enough to set in the way that they wanted whole fat milk. And I don't want to go into too many weird replacements because I know a lot about them. There are too many. But since I altered the recipe, in Evernote, I put like on a line next to it in a different color, like this is what I did, and also I did it for 30 minutes. And that made me feel really like a cook because I made the recipe my own. So if you find that their time doesn't work or you hate this spice, replace it with this one. That's going to be useful. I love my Evernote notebook for that. Losing a recipe would be so frustrating.
Yeah, that'd be really frustrating. Also, the Evernote thing is really helpful because with a lot of recipes, you can go down in the comments and see how people have messed with them.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of times, like I made sopa toscana the other night, and I went to the recipe comments, and there were a bunch of people saying, I actually doubled the cream, and it made it so much better. Or I added this, this, and this. So I'll try things like that, and as I do that, I will just edit my my Evernote note. And then I eventually come up with like my ultimate recipe for this meal. So that's really nice. So I'm trying to think of specialty quote unquote tools that I really like. And the only one that's really coming to mind for me right now is a box grater for grating cheese.
That's why I don't really know what you're talking about here.
You don't use cheese.
What is it? Literally a physical box? I've only known the long
ones that
sheet.
are like a sheet, right? Yeah,
that's the only one I know.
So
about.
you can
What's
get one. It's like an oblong box, basically. So it's
like an obelisk.
Yeah,
but simpler.
I don't know what an obelisk is, but
you need to play more.
It's
Gauntlet Dark Legacy.
It's about the size of a Jenga box, but then it widens out at the bottom a little bit, and it's just a lot easier because when you have one of those like sheet graters, you got to try to perfectly hold it over your bowl, and it's just difficult. With the box one, you put it in the bowl, you grate your cheese, or you just put it right down on the cutting board. You grate your cheese, and your cheese is just falling into the box
on the ground.
Yep.
And then you do the cheese.
And
thing.
you don't have to do it just with cheese. You can use it to shred like carrots. So if you want shredded vegetables in a recipe, for when I make Ukrainian borscht, I will shred the carrots.
You know what? That's
so
a good idea.
So they can cook a little faster.
If you don't like vegetables, that's a good idea because then they'll get less texture.
Some people don't like the texture of vegetables.
I remember that in certain foods, I love spinach, but in certain foods, the texture annoys me. Mm-hmm. So if I chop it up real fine, it's just like a spice.
Yep.
So get a grater, grate your vegetables, and you're like, oh, I basically don't even notice them.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
So box grater.
Grater.
And then I will say like the knife, steel, and sharpener. You don't got to buy them when you buy the knife. That knife out of the box will perform pretty well for you for a while, but put that on your like get soon list if you don't have them.
Yeah.
I also started carrying a pocket knife like a while ago because I just have boxes coming in all the time and it's nice to have one on hand.
Oh, I should sharpen that.
Boom. There you go.
Didn't even think of that.
You realize over time, why is this not cutting through this box as well as it used to? Well, it's dull now.
Because I cut it through duct tape a whole bunch.
And you cut it through duct tape a whole bunch.
Now it's like sticky and dull.
Exactly. So if you have a little sharpener, and I think my sharpener costs like $5 on Amazon, you can just just 10 or so passes through the setting you want, and it's good as new. It's maintenance of things. I think it's another thing we've lost. We've lost the maintenance of things. We just buy new stuff.
Once again, the companies don't want you to maintain them.
Nope.
Capitalism has its benefits, but it tries to take so much power out of the hand of the consumer because it benefits from maintaining all the power.
Yep.
I
learn how to maintain stuff.
Want to keep my stuff good. It makes me feel when I sharpen my knife, I'm gonna feel I'm not really making anything, but it's gonna feel real DIY. I'm gonna be like,
it's your knife.
Like I'm a good adult now. Yeah. I can handle this. I baby this knife. I treat it how I want. I make it look good.
If you just buy a knife and
I just throw it away, buy a new one, it doesn't feel good.
It's your knife kind of, but it's more just like the knife you bought. But if you maintain it and you learn how to use it properly, now it's your knife.
Well, that's also like cast iron skillets. If you're somewhere where you can use that real efficiently, those can be amazing and they're so personalized and they'll last longer than you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a legitimate heirloom. That's a big deal.
That's true.
I just don't want that while I'm in an apartment.
Yeah. When I have my gas range, I will cook on cast iron, and I will also cook more with a wok.
Yeah.
I use my wok sometimes if I want to do like a big batch of stir fry or fried rice for people, but there's just certain flavors you can't get cooking on a glass top because the flame needs to lick the sides of the wok. And you can't do that because there's no flame. It's just a coil.
There is no flame.
All right. Let's talk about mise en place.
I like some mise en place. I like some French stuff.
Mise en place is a lifestyle. So basically, mise en place is a French word, and it means essentially having everything set up before you start. It's your setup. It's your cutting board. It's your maybe pre-prepped ingredients, pre-prepped spices maybe. And in the restaurant business, they use this term all the time. Your mise en place is not just the setup when you start, but it's also the whole idea of working clean the whole time. So you're constantly cleaning off your cutting board. You're making sure everything is swept off. You're making sure you're stocked as when you got a down moment, maybe you're chopping some more garlic so you're ready to go for the next, the next rush or something. It's all about keeping everything nice and knowing where it is and having it organized.
Yeah.
This is incredibly important when you're cooking because if you don't do this, you're going to start a recipe and then you're going to have your steak in the pan and realize, oh my gosh, I didn't even chop up any garlic for this. And then you're going to rush over and chop garlic and now your steak's going to overcook.
Yeah.
And it's the whole messy room, messy mind concept.
Well, and then you're like, oh God, I was going to put eggs in here. You crack the eggs, things are burning. And you're like, well, I got to wash my hands. My hands are covered in raw egg now.
Yep.
I got to wash my hands. And then I'll come back. And then you're just wasting a whole bunch of steps.
Yep. Or your trash can's not there and you're like running across
the trash
kitchen
is
to throw
full.
something away. Uh-oh. Yeah, exactly. So my idea of mise en place is before I start cooking, I think through the entire recipe and I ask myself, what tools and what ingredients do I need for this recipe? And then I'll think, okay, what can I pre-prep or what do I need to pre-prep before I actually start cooking? So if I'm going to do salmon in the oven, I know I've got 20 minutes while that salmon is cooking for other things. Maybe I will chop my garlic while the salmon is cooking. I've got 20 minutes of downtime. But if I'm doing a steak, I want to be watching that steak the whole time. So I'm not going to be over dicing vegetables while the steak's in the pan. I'm doing that beforehand. And I want to make sure I have everything out. So cooking for me always starts with getting out everything I need, having it organized, knowing where it is, getting the trash can, putting it next to my workstation. And that way it's just this smooth process. There's no stress. It's just like Zen the whole time.
Yeah.
And
you don't want to be rushed.
Exactly. And when you're making a complicated recipe, it's essential.
You're already overwhelmed enough. You want to prove to yourself you can do it. Not, I can't keep track of that many things. Well, you weren't supposed to. You prepare it first, and then you don't have to.
Yeah, exactly. My most, I don't know the word for it. Enjoyable. I'll use the word enjoyable. My most enjoyable and proud cooking experience recently was, it was like simple in terms of the food I was making, but I made salmon in the oven. I made sauteed asparagus and shallots. I made spaghetti and then garlic bread.
I'm dying.
So it was 4 things. And this would have been a complete and utter failure if I had not prepped in advance. But what I did is I created a note in Evernote that, number 1, listed all the ingredients for each course. So it's just a bullet list for salmon, asparagus, for spaghetti, and for garlic bread.
Okay.
And then I listed out all the gear needed for each course.
Oh, you listed the tools you needed?
Yep. So it's like salmon, I need a cookie sheet, and I need the oven. For spaghetti, I need a big pot for the noodles. I need a stainless steel pan for the sauce. I need a colander to drain the noodles. I would have forgotten the colander if I hadn't thought through this. For asparagus, nonstick pan, and then for the garlic bread, the oven and the cookie sheet. And then I thought through the timing. This was very important. I'm very glad I did it. So then I went through, okay, salmon, that's 20 to 25 minutes in the oven. Asparagus is about 7 or 8 minutes. The spaghetti, I need to get the water to boiling, and then I need to cook the pasta at al dente, and then I need to throw it in the sauce. So if I hadn't done this, I probably would have forgotten to get the water to boiling and then totally screwed my timing up. Because I just think, oh, I can start the spaghetti 10 minutes before the salmon's done. Nope, it's going to take the water 10 minutes to boil.
Yeah, and then you got like cold salmon and you're trying to...
Exactly. So timing is like key with cooking. And the garlic bread takes 7 minutes. So, okay, I'm going to set a timer for the salmon minus 7 minutes. When that goes off, pop the garlic bread in the oven. And when you have all this in your head, you just execute it. I will actually say another nice kitchen gadget is an iPad or iPhone or something to sit on the counter, because then you can see your note.
Oh, your stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I did, because I don't like my electronics in the kitchen, because I'm very I don't want food touching my stuff for reasons. Anyway, what I did was I printed out the recipe and I just magneted it to the fridge, and I was like, well, how have I never thought of this? It's so simple, and it just completely changed how I cook this.
Yeah.
It was like dumb how simple that solution was. But
yeah, it works. So this is definitely not essential, but we went to Anna's dad's house for Christmas, and they just redid their kitchen. And one thing they added that I loved is this like really cool pneumatic shelf that is totally hidden on the bottom of one of the cabinets, but then you pull it down and it just reveals this cookbook holder that has a flat, clear plastic sheet that you can put over the book so the page doesn't turn itself.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's just right there. And I was like, that's awesome.
That's probably... You don't need that, but it is really cool.
It was really cool, but you don't need it. And I don't even need it because I don't use cookbooks. Again, I found cookbooks to be kind of overwhelming. So every recipe I've made so far has been me just thinking, okay, I want to learn how to make a good steak. And then I just Google around how to make the best steak. And I kind of just form this idea in my head. And eventually I'll build an Evernote note out of it to plan my recipe. And the same thing with the salmon and the spaghetti and everything.
Yeah.
So I had the timing set up, and then this was crucial. I thought out the procedure in advance. So I had the mise en place step. The chef's knife needs to be out. The bread knife needs to be out. Cutting board needs to be out. I need the big pot, the pan, the nonstick pan. So everything gets out. And then there's the prep step. I'm going to preheat the oven. I'm going to salt and pepper the salmon. I'm going to add some lemon juice to the salmon and pop that in the oven. And then there's like the actual procedure thing. And everything was in order. And I had thought through the timing. And because I had thought through it, when it came time to cook everything, I would just check it. All right, salt the water. Boom. Put the pasta in the water. Boom. All right. Now we're going to add the asparagus. Just down the line. And I think if I had not done this, it would have ended in tears. But that's because it was a brand new recipe with like 4 courses. I think if it was a little simpler, I wouldn't have had to do this. But it was really fun, actually, to just think through this process and have to figure it all out. So I enjoyed doing that. And I would highly recommend, if anyone's going to do a complicated recipe, plan it out first. It really, really helps. Okay. And that was all I had, actually.
All right.
So, I mean, what else? Is there anything else you think we should mention?
I think the only things that I'd like to mention is, one, along with you were like with the mise en place, clearing out stuff as you do.
Yeah.
But also, make sure your kitchen and stuff is all clean at the end of the night, because the thing that kills my cooking the most is when I wake up and I'm like, okay, I'm starving, so I don't want to clean the kitchen, but I can't cook because I didn't clean the kitchen. Yep. So now what do? Well, I'm just really hungry, and eventually I give up and buy food. Breaks the whole thing. But if the kitchen was clean to begin with, you gotta like clear to neutral on that. That way you can just come make food. And also, this is just like a little thing that I thought of to do with eggs that I really like, because I don't like having to like worry about raw egg on the counter edge and clean it off. So I take like a little small plate, I crack the egg on the plate, put it into the bowl I'm gonna pour it in there with, and then I just wash the plate and bowl. Never had to touch the counter.
That works.
It's just like a little thing.
Yeah. For any recipe where there's downtime, I will be cleaning while there's the, in between steps.
Yeah,
because I don't like having
in a dishwasher and be like, I don't need this. There you go.
I don't like having a super messy kitchen at the end of a meal. So I will just do it while I'm cooking if I can. And then when I'm done, it's like, oh, look, all I got to do is wash the plates, maybe wipe the counters off. Good to go.
Yeah.
But you're definitely right on that.
Like, as long as the kitchen is dirty, I will just be so hungry that I'll be like, I don't have time to clean the whole. What have I done to myself? So that's the biggest thing, is just making sure it's clean to begin with so you can start.
Places for people to start. So, I mean, like, making a steak is great and everything. But one thing I've learned is big, hearty soups, like borscht, like zuppa toscana, which is zuppa toscana, like Tuscan. Let's see here. Chili, stuff like that. You can make a huge batch, and then that will give you lunches for a few days. So one thing I've learned is I'm into cooking, but I'm into cooking at night, not in the morning. Okay. And if I do eat lunch, I think a lot of times we skip lunch. But if I do eat lunch, I'm not cooking it. I'm working. So I will either go out for lunch and spend money, or if I have leftovers from the night before, I'm going to eat that. So a lot of times we try to cook in bulk.
So don't go overboard and think I need to cook 3 meals every day immediately.
Yeah, don't think that
I am
learning
only
to cook
cooking from now
means
on.
that you cook every single meal. No. You can learn how to batch cook. You can do a slow cooker, like a crock pot.
Yeah. Well, that stuff's also pretty hard. It's pretty hard to mess up like a good chili.
It's really difficult to mess that up.
You cut the onions at whatever speed. There's no rush because the food ain't going to be done for hours anyway.
Yeah. And I will say,
it's pretty easy.
For anybody worried about timing, slow, like low temperature simmering pot recipes, you can flub the timing. Like if the chili's in the slow cooker for 7 hours instead of 6, it's probably not a big deal.
Once it hits 6:01, it all burns.
It bursts into flames.
It's nothing like Overcooked, which is a fantastic game, but it's nothing like that.
No, that game is amazing.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I'm doing a complicated recipe, it does kind of feel like that a little bit. But luckily, there's no customers to get mad. It's just myself.
No rats taking the onions.
No rats taking onions. I have no rats in my kitchen, luckily. Just a cat sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, bulk cook. Another thing we do is on Sundays, Anna and I will do an egg bake, which is really easy. We just literally get out the casserole dish and put some spinach in there. And I like to saute up some onions and garlic and mushrooms. Put that down. Pour like a dozen eggs that are whisked up over it. And then I'll put in some sour cream and cheese. throw it in the oven for a while, and out comes this casserole that you can eat for breakfast for the whole week.
Yeah.
Hey,
so
breakfast.
You could potentially, with that and just a big soup, maybe you just bulk cooked breakfast and lunch, and now you just cook dinner.
Yep.
Which is when you're most likely to have the time after work and class and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you cook bulk enough, then you could cook like 1 or 2 nights a week and then have leftovers 2 or 3 nights a week. And then if you want to still go out to eat, you can, but now you don't feel like you have to every night. And now you don't feel guilty for doing it.
That's the biggest thing.
This is the other thing that cooking has done. In the past, it was often the case that we'd come home and Anna and I were feeling lazy, so we'd go out to eat as like the last resort. I just don't want to cook. We're just going to go out. But now, because I normally cook, going out to eat is a treat.
Yeah.
We plan it. And because we're saving a lot of money on cooking, I don't feel so guilty about going out to a nicer restaurant.
That's like one rule I've tried to maintain. Like to maintain a good food budget and just to make sure I'm cooking and being healthy is just like, we should never go to a restaurant because we accidentally were hungry and had nothing.
Yep.
It should always be like, I want to go to that restaurant. Mm-hmm. Let's do it. It should never be like the default.
Yeah. I guess one little final tip I would say here is for the person listening to this that is getting all super gung-ho and really excited, number one, grab on to that feeling and run with it because that's what makes life exciting. But also, maybe think about having a couple of real easy, quick recipes in your back pocket. Like, make the stir fry I talked about at the beginning of this episode, because there's going to come some nights where you're into cooking, right? You're the kind of person who likes to cook, but tonight's just not a good night. And you have no leftovers in the fridge, and you got to make something. If you know how to whip up some scrambled eggs that taste good, if you know how to make a stir fry real quick,
grilled
you're
cheese.
Good to go. But if all you've been working on in your manic cooking phase is all these super complicated recipes, then what's going to happen is you're going to burn out. You didn't put anything in your back pocket that was easy, and now you're back to microwave mayonnaise tortillas, and you've just decided that it was too much of a pain in the butt.
It tasted so good, but in a really gross way.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to eat a microwave mayonnaise tortilla.
There was chicken and chili powder in there. It's fancy.
Okay, that does make it a little fancy.
I put a spice in there.
Maybe I could go for it then. But yeah, go for your complicated recipes, but also keep a couple of those simple ones in your back pocket. Okay, so we talked about a couple of resources in this episode. I want to sort of recap those and also add in a couple of more. Number one, in the show notes somewhere, hopefully we'll find that website where you can put in the ingredients you have, and then it will suggest.
We're going to find it because I want to find it.
Yeah, I want to find it. I don't remember the name. If it's not in the show notes, I'm sorry, maybe I made it up, but I'm pretty sure I didn't make it up. I'm pretty sure it's real.
No, I used something like that when I was vegetarian. I remember this.
So yeah, there's that. There's the book, The Science of Cooking by Dr. Stuart Farrimond. I'm really enjoying this book, so I'm just going to plug it again. The YouTube channel, Alex French Guy Cooking, is fantastic. I love his channel. And also, honestly, Gordon Ramsay and Jamie Oliver both have really good YouTube channels. Gordon Ramsay's has turned sort of into like a dumping ground for clips from his TV shows where he just like yells at hotel owners. But some of the older videos, maybe that's how you do it, yeah. But he has some older videos that are really good. And I learned recently how to make an amazing Christmas Day breakfast that was it was lightly toasted croissant with smoked salmon and then scrambled eggs made the right way on top. It was so good.
Oh, we got to end this before I die.
It was so good.
That sounds so good.
And he teaches you the technique of how to make scrambled eggs properly, because every time I've made scrambled eggs in the past, they've been like dry and kind of rubbery and not that great. And turns out if you keep working them the whole time and you take them on, you put them on the heat and you take them off and you kind of move back and forth, and you get that rich, creamy consistency that you can get at restaurants sometimes. Yeah. Throw some chives in there. Oh, so good. So we'll link to some of that kind of stuff. And I think that's probably a decent number of resources. I think episode 103 was also a food related episode.
Was that the one where we talked about like finding good budget cooking and stuff?
We definitely didn't know as much back then, but there's probably some decent stuff in there.
I'm so hungry.
And Andrew and I also did a cooking episode recently on Listen Money Matters, because when I get into something, I shoehorn it into all my podcasts if I can.
There's a sense of frugality when you're cooking food yourself.
Exactly. That was my excuse. I was like, Andrew, people can save money if they learn how to cook.
Even Whole Foods isn't that expensive as long as you're not buying hipster snacks and drinks. The like $8 drinks are where all your money's going. You can buy like produce and grains and beans and it's like fine.
Yeah. But if you're on a hardcore budget, that episode we did will probably be helpful.
Yeah.
Because it links to some stuff that's like really budget level. At this point, we're to the point where we don't have to eat rice and beans for every meal. We just want to make sure we're not, buying stupid things all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is what, episode 192, right?
Sounds about right.
I think so. So show notes for this episode, including all of those resources that we mentioned, are over at cigpodcast.com/192. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, just click that link in the description down below and you will find all that good stuff. You can also rate and review this podcast on iTunes if you want to help support it. That definitely helps us out. And I think that is all we got. So until next week's episode, stay cute.